So 585, as I mentioned before, was our breakout area. And as we mentioned, we pointed out that, at least technically speaking, on a 30-minute chart, it looked like we had the door open for, the market would set itself up for an eventual test, not anytime soon, but an eventual test that could go to 714. And then the rug got pulled out of the euro as potential French candidate Jupp said he's not prepared to go into the race. And that really scared the market. And, once again, it's considered or perceived to be a victory for Marine Le Pen. And her whole thing has been that if she wins, she would take France out of the Eurozone, which basically put the market to where it was last week when it was under a lot of trouble. And so we saw French German 10-year yields blow out to over 65 basis points to where they were 5 days ago, as I said, putting the market right back where it was at the beginning of last week when it was under a lot of trouble. So that's where we find ourselves. We did, take a look at the 30-minute. We looked at the cash dollar index when we came on this morning. For those that may have missed it, to see where we were at as far as support. Mentioned we were into some support here around this 580 on the euro, and mentioned this was a breakout area, so this is where we thought we'd find some support. So let's take a look at the euro now. Now I will say this: on the 2-hour, we got up to that 630, but we couldn't get past that. We'll take a look at it on the 30-minute. We got the buy signal here last week, as the market started to take off, and we had talked about how well the euro was holding up. I thought that it would, get down to closer to the, 44 area, and it really held up exceptionally well, to the point that, other dollar pairs were going to lows, but the euro was really holding up really well overall. Even the cash dollar index was moving a little bit to newer highs, and the euro just wouldn't break. And which really said a lot, considering that the euro comprises 56% of the cash dollar index. So we got this market taken off on Friday, and one of the guys, Andrews, made a good point. He said, you just don't want to be short, and we got that nice big run up. And you can see here we tested the 620 area. Market got knocked back. Tested again, got knocked back. And then we closed above the 620, which really opened the door, technically speaking, for potentially an eventual move up here towards 714. And then the news about Jupp came across the wires, and it really pushed the euro and put it in a pretty tough shape at that point. We can take a look at it on the 2-hour chart. So here we are on the euro, and you can see here that unlike the 30-minute, the key area here was the 630, and we never did close above the 630. Now the 30-minute actually closed above the 620, but the 2-hour never did, and then we finished, if you look at it, pretty weak in the sense that it broke up, and then, it broke above, and then we finished just barely hanging on to 6. Now on the 30-minute, as I mentioned, it showed that potentially it was a door open for 714. We supported 698. Obviously, we got below that, and you can see that next level of support was coming in at 580, and 585 was our breakout area on Friday. Once again, it's the beginning of the week, so as the market came under pressure, and you see a big big news item like that hit into a market that was already weak for the same issues, it was certainly going to go in and impact the euro. And that's exactly what we saw. So we've come back in here. We've got 568 as the old bias pivot. And that'd be basically your marker. So that's your risk right there. If you were to go and say, okay, I want to get long the euro, or at least, I would think be short covering the euros and say, okay, 568 is my risk marker. That's where I definitely don't want it to close on a 2-hour close below 568. You can go below it, but you don't want it to close. If it closes below it, then you know that the momentum is turning at that point. And like I said, there's never any guarantees in the market, but technically speaking, the same way on Friday when we got above it and the market, opened the door for a move higher, we saw just that, and we really got clipping along. So you could be seeing the same thing. That would be a risk if you're looking. Once again, I scalped a little bit. I was happy to not push it because, like I said, it's a Monday, and that news item basically about Jupe basically put the euro back to where it was as far as the concerns or the angst. So we'll take a look at where we're at right now. Obviously, 568 is key. That's your bias pivot here. If we're looking for a little bit of support, let's take a look here. Which would be right there at 560. And let's see if we see anything else here. If we go to the 30-minute, probably right in here. Now, this area is a good area, this 580. I'm just saying what you're looking at as far as risk. Now, we know 568, you'd want to stay above 568. The bias pivot on the 2-hour chart, we're looking at where would be support right now. And that would come in here. If we were to make another leg low, it would be 557. But it looks, pretty decent support here at this 5. We talked about, I mentioned to some people 585, and you can see 580 here, all these touches. We've already made one dip here. Okay, we made the dip here, and then we broke it here, and then we made another dip here. So my thoughts would be is if we made another dip, that'd be it. Then we're just going to, looks like we're just going to go and fall apart. But the support right now would be if you thought, okay, well, if we make another dip, where would I be wanting to cover my shorts if I jumped on short and went for the dip? Like I said, this area looks pretty good here, for right now, this 557. So we're going to mark that off on the bias pivot. Or not the bias pivot, but I mean the bias chart. And resistance, let's take a look where resistance would be. Doesn't have to be that close. It's a little bit too close. Resistance would have to be this 630. This 630 right in here. Let's mark that up. I think the euro would have a tough time, a little bit of a tough time today, is because the key thing is you really, and we'll go to the 30-minute to get a little bit better idea. So you really got some people trapped. I know maybe some of the people have already got knocked out. But one of the things that the euro was doing, we talked about early last week, not early last week, late last week, was how well it was holding up. And, we were thinking, okay, I was even thinking, I go, it's going to take a, going lower. 484, we'll see a pause. And then we'll probably end up going down into, I think it was the 450 we talked about, or 448, that we had some good support. And if you look here, it didn't even make it to the 484. Just stuck here at this 494, holding up like a champ. So when things turned around, it was open for a good, a decent rebound. And a good, decent rebound was exactly what we saw. And you saw that the momentum even changed. And you can see here, as we broke above to 570 and we came back, this 542 held. It was also the faster exponential moving average, and everything looked like blue skies ahead. Market runs up to here, and eventually we make it up here to 620. We get pushed back, good, basically about 25 pips. We make another run for 620. Let's see here, we'll focus on this. And it pulls back, and we come back here. It looks like a pretty tight little, I wouldn't say a wedge, but you can look at it here, right here. So as we break above this thing, the market's ready. It's ready to go. And we break above this, and we really hit some stops. It looks like this market's ready to go. We get a solid close. Notice here that, watch this. Look at this. These closes here, 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 this high, right here. You see that high there? 631. Look at it. And then even closed above that. So technically speaking, it looks like, I don't want to say blue skies ahead, but it looks like we can now open the door higher. And so with that close above the 620, open the door for potentially that this market could go, and not today, tomorrow, but whenever, can potentially get up here to 714. Well, then the French candidate, a potential candidate, a prospective candidate, Jupe, says, I'm not prepared to get into the race. Well, that just took the stuffing out of the euro. And not only that is, you're starting out the week on a Monday. And we've already had a pretty good rally here, so you're probably looking for people to say, okay, well, it took off. I'll try and buy on the dips. So the market was potentially, even though it looked like technically we can move higher, with that news hitting and early on Monday, in the European session, it really took the wind out of the sails. And they pressed them. And so the market knows that, or the market believes, people that got long on this break here, they're all trapped. So they were going to press it and keep on pressing it to this low, and then another low. And now we're starting to see a little bit of stabilization here, which is coming to this 580. So that's what I'm saying, how the market can still move higher. We could probably, next area would probably be the 610, but it's going to have that pressure underneath it. So let's go in and get back to the main charts and go into the cable. Now we saw the story of the cable, and it continues to remain weak. And let's see where we stand. We actually had support previously at 2208. Looks like we got almost down there. Let's get a little bit closer look on this. On the idea that, the cable will probably continue to remain weak, and we're seeing the euro pick up a little bit here. And we've already come past the 61%, and you know how the cable loves the 78%. So let's move this over. That's coming in about the same area here, right here. That's 21.26. That's a long ways off too. But eventually we could make it down here. For today, we're going to say support would come in. That's still a long ways off. 21.69. Because they could take one more dip. I mean, it's extremely oversold, but we're going to go with 21.69 for support. Show you where I'm coming up with that right there. Right. Maybe it was even lower. Actually, it's 21.57 unless we go with. For today, let's move it up in here. Right there, 21.78. So we'll have 21.78. Because we're pretty oversold. I think eventually we can get down to that 78%, which is 21.40, but for now it's going to be 21.78. And resistance, right there, 23.47 for resistance. We'll call it 23.48. Obviously, it's bearish. And let's take a look at the Aussie dollar, which has remained under pressure, coming off those lows. And we had support at 75.15. We didn't even make it down there. We made it down to 75.45. And resistance is 76.09. We bumped up against the 76.09. You can see that here. Now, tonight's the RBA rate decision. They're expected to remain on hold. The market is a little bit oversold, not a whole lot. So that's why you see a little bit of short covering here. And let's take a look at this. We never did put the ranges on that. Hang on. Actually should be 70, okay, 75.19 basic close enough. So we got 71.60, $77.41, and this is actually 75.19. Now, tonight's the RBA rate decision. They expect to remain on hold. The idea that the Fed is looking at raising rates in the next few days or 10 days. So we're going to go with this 75.15 being support here on the Aussie dollar. And that's where we're at, 75.15. And resistance, we're going to go right here. $76.19 is at 38%. So you probably see a little bit of resistance there, but what we're looking at is $76.42, which coincides with this 50% here. let's go in and mark that off here. Like I said, 76.19, you see that is a 38%, but let's go in and mark this off. There we go. So that's going to be our resistance at 76.42. We could probably get a little bit of push right in here if the market make a push up in here, but this is where we're going to tag for resistance if we get maybe a positive reaction, price action wise, out of the RBA statement. And we have to change this to bearish now. When we get back, we'll go on and take a look at the Kiwi and move into the other pairs, and obviously take a look at gold. Gold found support. We were talking about, remember on Friday, we were talking about the 50% of the range between 1183 to 1265, and that would come in at 2380, and we ended up finding support right in that area, and then resulted in a nice bounce. So we'll be back. We'll cover all that, and thanks for joining us here on the Morning Edge webinar.